Well, the air of cooperation that we've seen this past week in Ottawa has not stopped speculation of a possible early election. And while no one is openly talking about it, the parties are sorting out what to do if an election were to happen. Take a listen to what we heard today from the Bloc Québécois leader.
We are not making decisions based on are we going to go into elections or not. Quebecers want us to do what is good for Quebec, and if it's good for Canada too, so far so good. If for any reason there's an election, I don't have the feeling that I had in front of me a prime minister planning an election, but one never knows. If we have to go into election, we are entirely ready. We never stop doing the meetings that are required in order to be ready to go in elections.
The Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet. Well, joining us now are the political strategists. Laura Pennell, former advisor to Liberal ministers, now head of business operations at Spark Advocacy. Cole Hogan is a Conservative strategist, and George Soule is an NDP strategist, the founder and principal at OnStep Strategies. Hello to all three of you.
Hello. Hello.
So listen, I'm not going to get too much into the election speculation. You weren't here, Laura, but we were talking about it last week. And based on what you guys were saying, quick summation, maybe, but probably not smart until the Liberals get more wins on the table. Your words, not mine. But that is exactly where I want to pick it up, because we're approaching the first break week of this year. We are just a couple of weeks away from the first anniversary of Mark Carney becoming the Liberal leader. So that's where I want to begin. In terms of the assessment of what this government has been able to do, has Mark Carney, has his government lived up to what it campaigned it would be in the last election, Cole?
No, I don't think so. And I think there's a few things they need to do to really, like we've mentioned before on this program, demonstrate those wins. And there is a spirit of cooperation on Parliament Hill right now. So, the Conservatives voted for Bill C5, the Major Projects Bill. They voted for the GST bill the other day. They actually put forward a unanimous consent motion to push forward the GST bill even faster. And they're willing to work on, I think Pierre said they'll vote for anything that makes groceries more affordable, and they're willing to work on the crime bill as well. So I think right now we're not anywhere near an election for all those reasons, because I think the Conservatives see that they need to meet the moment in terms of cross the aisle cooperation. But Mark Carney in particular and the Liberals, they really do need to demonstrate some wins on the domestic front, because there really isn't anything measurable that we can point to. They had a housing announcement that was completely buried by the EV strategy, because the government has only built about 7,500 houses when they need to build about 500,000 each year to keep up with population growth. So if they don't get any major wins on the domestic front, it's going to be pretty hard to go back to the electorate and ask for a majority mandate.
Okay, has this government lived up to what it campaigned on, George?
Well, I guess that depends on what you think they campaigned on, right? I think as far as their promises go, not even close. I mean, talking about the housing promise, their own budget is only halfway. Never mind what they've built, what they've promised within their budget is only half of what they promised in the campaign, less than a year ago. So, like on pretty much every front on that level, they've fallen far short. Ultimately, what Mark Carney really ran on was being the adult in the room. Hey, I'm not Justin Trudeau, and I'm not Pierre Poilievre, and I'm not Jagmeet Singh. Elect me. So on that front, he is himself, and so he's done that. I think.
So he's kept those promises.
He's kept the promise of not being those three other men, and so ultimately that is what he has been. And I think that to a bit of what Cole was saying and going forward, it's just, can he do more than that, right? And I think one of the challenges they've had, and is both himself and largely the people he's put around him in the PMO, don't really either understand or have an interest or an experience on how committees work and how the House of Commons work. And by and large, in the first year, Canadians aren't going to care about that stuff. But again, if things aren't happening, if things aren't passing, without any of those wins, as we said before, it's going to be hard for him to go to an election. So he'll want to maybe hold back. That said, as we talked about before, with the economy maybe getting worse, Donald Trump's situation going to get worse, he's probably he's open to a possibility of it, which is why you saw that flip-flop with the Conservatives. Like all of a sudden they're conciliatory. Because if they go to an election right now, for sure Mark Carney gets more seats and he gets a better majority, and he'll feel good about it.
According to the polls, right? The polls are very strong for the Liberals right now. So Laura, what would you say about living up to the promise, really, and dovetail that with the accomplishments that you would say the Liberals have been able to accomplish under Mark Carney?
Yeah, but I think to the point of where the polls sit, I think he has been very successful, and he's told Canadians what he was going to do, and more importantly, who he was going to be. and that these are extremely, and I hate using this word, like unprecedented or challenging times. And they wanted someone who could roll with the punches and be steady at the helm of the ship. And I think that's what they're getting. And so I understand, and I agree that they're going to have to find some wins in the over the next few months. These promises that they've made on infrastructure, on housing, and cost of living are going to have to start to roll out. But I also think Canadians see that leadership and that steady helm. I think people right now are very stressed at home. They're scared at home. There's a lot of noise on the news right now, and it gives people a lot of confidence. And so I don't think we should kind of discount what that is. And I think he's looking at this in generational wins, and he needs to find a way to find those more immediate political wins.
Okay, now you pointed to a couple of wins, Cole, in terms of the Conservatives helping the government getting C5 passed. That was last June. GST was this week. Only C3 really went through, in last fall and winter, and that had to do with lost Canadians. How much of that would be blamed on the Liberals? How much of that is an argument for the Liberals to say, hey, listen, without a majority, this is what the opposition does to our agenda?
Sure, but if the Conservatives help move parts of their agenda along, that sort of deflates that argument as well. So the Liberals know that they need to gain some steam and some momentum on the domestic front as it relates to housing, the cost of living, immigration. These are things that they need to address. Even by the government's last budget, they admitted that the unprecedented level of immigration over the last decade led to an undue strain on Canada's housing and healthcare system. So having admitted that, they know they need to make some different changes there in order to combat that and the errors of the previous Liberal government, because that still sticks to them. And on the Conservative side, obviously they've gotten a signal that Canadians expect them and parliamentarians to work together, especially as it relates to Trump and tariffs. So those are the two things meeting in the middle, where no one wants an election and all of a sudden everyone wants to work together.
Well, no one, maybe the Liberals. We'll see. George, how much of it is, if you're looking at what the government hasn't accomplished, how much of it is the government's fault versus the opposition being oppositional?
Right, but it's always the government's fault, ultimately. I mean, and I don't say that to be accusatory. It's the government's job to govern. I think I've said that before. I mean, it's a minority parliament. Your job is to figure out how to make that work, and whether that's working with the official opposition or one of the smaller parties, that is the job of the government, is to make that work out. And there's always a way to make it work. But if you choose not to, because you want to say, look, we're not able to get our agenda forward. This guy you're scared of is ruining everything. We're going to an election, give us a mandate, then things don't work out, because that's the ultimate goal. And on the flip side, that's why, again, the Conservatives are now saying we're working because they want to get rid of that argument for Carney to have if they do go to an election. So I think that's the dance, and that's one of the problems we're having. But again, to the other point is that Mark Carney's only real job right now is to be the grown-up at the microphone talking about how scary the world is, and he's doing that relatively well right now. And so I think, again, unprecedented times. It's a very strange time when the cost of living is hitting everybody hard, but more than that is a genuine possibility that we could be invaded by the United States of America. So people's focus is in a place we're not used to it being.
And I do wonder, to Cole's point on the Conservatives being, cooperative at this point, how much of that is strategy and how much of that is being lost? And feeling this fear of losing caucus members, this fear of the election, and trying to reposition. It feels like they're lost, like they're holding things up in committee and they're trying to play nice with these votes on division in the House. And so I wonder how long that lasts, because they're going to have to find an identity, and they're going to have to be able to say to Conservatives and to Canadians, what is our value proposition as the official opposition? If all we're doing is kind of quiet and talking about some niche issues, what are we offering Canadians?
So if I can, the Conservatives can do two things at once here. They can continue to advocate for the domestic issues on which they lead, like the cost of living, like housing, like immigration, and also work with the Conservatives as it relates to things that will actually, potentially make groceries a bit more affordable for Canadians with the GST rebate, to actually get some measures reformed with bail so people are out on the streets committing the same crimes. So I think Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, having been very domestic focused in the last election, see that they need to divert their focus to work with the Liberals in certain areas. And we talk about Team Canada, we talk about parliamentarians coming together. Now we're witnessing that, and we'll see if the Liberals actually like when Conservatives work with them.
Okay, so quick go around then. If we now have this spirit of cooperation, if in fact it lasts, you mentioned a couple of bills, but what do you expect to get passed? Because in my mind, I'm thinking that the Liberals have a bail reform issue ahead of them, they have a bill ahead of them, they have intimate partner violence, they have hate crime legislation. What here is going to actually move forward now that we have a spirit of cooperation?
I think we'll see, first and foremost, I would like to see an energy project presented and approved first and foremost. I think that would be a big win for everyone, and the Conservatives even demonstrated they're willing to vote for that. So first and foremost, an energy project, and I think, like the GST bill, anything that they can do on affordability or the cost of groceries, I think the Conservatives will support too.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I think it's all like the conservative-minded things that Mark Carney is putting forward, the Conservatives are going to vote for, and that'll move forward. And the Conservatives, again, he goes to caucus on Wednesdays and they tell him, we like this bill, we would have written this bill, why are we not voting for this bill? And so I think those ones will move forward. And I think on the flip side, Mark Carney's going to be able to maintain some popularity regardless of that stuff, because every day Donald Trump says something else. And so while the House is falling apart and not moving forward, Donald Trump says he's not going to open the Gordie Howe bill. So Mark Carney gets to look like a statesman rather than actually somebody who's trying to get things done for Canadians.
Laura, what are you looking towards getting passed?
Gosh, I hate to agree, but
Spirit of cooperation.
Spirit of cooperation. I do agree, and I do think they'll focus on legislation where there is that deliverable, right? They're going to need to find opportunities to show Canadians that there's either the cost of living is going down, they're building projects, and so I think they will laser focus on those pieces where they can get Conservative support. But to this point, what happens in the House does matter, but I think there is so much happening else in the world right now that the government won't be graded on their accomplishments in the House of Commons as much as we would love that to be that way here in Ottawa. A lot of that's going to be how he handles the next few months and the negotiations ahead with the president.
And just quickly, I think it's going to surprise us. I think that is true until it's not, right? And all of a sudden, at some point, it will become a thing that nothing's passed, or that accomplishments haven't happened, or that people aren't feeling that change. I think it'll be very slow, and then all of a sudden, where that shift will happen, where people will say, wait a minute, what have you done for me lately? And that will be, I think that'll come quicker than people expect.
Yeah, okay. Well, this has been the longest year ever, so who knows? We will see. Listen, if people at home wonder what the background conversation is as to whether or not you pull the trigger in terms of election, you just got a sampling of it. Laura, Cole, George, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.